Now let us continue our discussions with replacement analysis. And remember when we had the discussions about the capitalized cost, there is this something like with replacement, without replacement. So if you could remember that certain part. So what really happens in that certain with replacement is after the replacement analysis, so we decided to like replace the old something like equipment or asset. But this replacement analysis, before they were able to arrive at that certain point where we have to always like replace this after n years, they were able to assess that based on the several factors that they have to consider in order to obtain that conclusion. And we do have three factors that we always consider in a replacement study. So we have the physical impairment, so that's the deterioration of the old asset, the altered requirements that are actually involved in this original asset, and the technology, of course, because technology is changing from time to time, so you have to keep up with the changes, especially when there is a new or there are new like modern technologies available. What is the basis of our computations with all of these physical impairment, altered requirements, technology that are actually considered in replacement studies? In essence, we have to consider the economic life, the ownership life, physical life, and useful life of certain asset. Now remember, in replacement studies, we have what we call the defender and the challenger. So remember, defender is your current asset. So for example, I'm using a certain car for whatever purpose I like. So this is my current asset and that is my defender. Whatever is available that can be your new asset or that can replace your defender would be the challenger. So it's like if you have a lot of available cars, then you might call this the challengers. So whatever is in your possession, you call that the defender. And it's like we're assessing all of these challengers against the defender. So parang ganun, parang law lang, no? It is important for us to understand the lives that are actually available. And sometimes, actually most of the time, no, I use this interchangeably because sa problems naman natin, hindi na talaga di-differentiate kung ano pinagkaiba ng economic life, ownership life, physical life, useful life. But in here, let's try to differentiate each of them, no? So I'll try to create a timeline here. Let's say I have 6 years. So within this 6 years, yan. So let's start with the 0 year. So it's like the acquisition period of a certain car. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So let's have a short story. So since it's pandemic and may na-save yung certain family for a car for their new business. So it's like bumili sila ng new car for because I wanted to invest on this Grab or something like parang service, so ganon na business. So for the first let's say 2 years, so for the first 2 years they were engaged in this something like Grab business, and that's the primary income of those of that family. But after some time, humina na yung business. So they shifted to just, oh well, since mahina na yung business natin and we can just set up something like a store. So yung mga income na na-produce nung certain first business nila, which is the Grab. So it's like yung Grab business, which is the primary income nila. So pinag-set up na nila ng for business, which is something like store. So dito na sila kumukuha ngayon ng parang primary income. But then again, since sayang naman yung bili nila dito sa kanilang car, so they were just having this as yung parang rental service. So syempre pag rental, it's not your major income, but then again, it's more of your secondary income na lang. But still, they were still able to utilize its capacity for producing income, diba? And then after some 3 to 6 years, 3 to 6 years, so they just decided to like kulang pala to, no? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's like 5 and then 6. So from 3 to let's say 3 to 5 years na lang. So from 3 to 5 years, they just decided na since for example, napagod na yung family, so they stopped the rental service as well as the Grab service. Yung Grab pala finish na yan. So they stopped the rental service and they decided to just have this car for their family purposes. So I'm saying na kung gusto lang nilang mag-travel, yung family. So, yun na lang yung purpose ng car nila. Just the normal or the typical cars that we have, no? Not for business. So, after that, after the fifth year, so the pandemic is over. So, they were able to obtain some kind of, parang money, greater income, no? They decided to sell this car. And then, ayun. So, they decided to sell this car, no? So, dito na. So, after 6 years na. So, ito. So, they decided to sell this car. So, sa 5th year na lang nga. So, nag-sell sila and then, on the 6th year, meron na silang new owner, yung car. So, this is something like the timeline of that car. So, let's differentiate all of the lives that are available that we can actually understand this set of lives that we have. So the first one is having this Grab as your primary source of income. We can call that the economic life of this car for from 0 to 2 years. Kasi it serves its purpose as being the one that produces the primary income of the family or the primary. It serves as primary service. No? And then the 2 to 3rd year, just the 1 year for the rental service. So the rental service plus the Grab, which actually is 3 years combined, we can call that the useful life. Simply because it is useful in producing income. So it's like that a certain common sense, no? Since it's producing income, though it could be just the primary or the secondary, but still useful. So you can call that the useful life. But whenever it's serving its primary service intended for it, yun nga kasi for business purposes yung simula ng first 2 years. So you can call that the economic life. Usually the economic life is less than the useful life. But of course, when the asset is still serving its purpose up until before the or prior to its selling or the disposal, then the economic life would always equal to the useful life. But what is this ownership life? Ownership life is just the total number of years that you are in possession of that certain asset. So it's like starting from the 0 year up to the 5th year. So whatever is, whatever you do with your asset, as long as it's yours, then you can call that your ownership life. It's the combination of the economic life, the useful life, and usually those two. And lastly, the physical life is usually the longest period because this is the total number of years combined with all the owners, kasi 'di ba, you're the first owner, then pinagbili mo, may second owner ka na the 6th year. So, kung gaano niya katagal gagamitin yun, his or her ownership life plus your ownership life would be the physical life. So, as long as this certain asset is still used or still owned by someone, so you just have to add that for the physical life. So, it's like as long as it's usable for another person, and it's not yet really, it's like salvage, so parang ganon, you can consider that as an addition to the physical life. So in short, we could assess this as your economic life is less than the useful life, which is less than the ownership life, which is less than the physical life, most probably less than or equal. So yun yung mga maging parang idea natin for all these lives that are mentioned. Pero sa problem nga before, since I'm kind of interchanging this kasi wala kasi tayong mga problem na nagdi-differentiate between these mga lives natin. Usually, we just use study period and then we consider that the useful life or the economic life of a certain asset. But then, with this, I hope na mas nag-guess nyo kung ano yung difference nung lahat ng or apat na to. Okay? And let's proceed to ano ba yung mga market factors natin na we have to consider in solving for the replacement analysis, because there are a lot of things that we can consider, but what really is the most important factors that we might solve for so that we can decide whether to replace a certain asset or not. Now, normally what we do in replacement analysis is to determine the market value of the challenger. So if ever you're able to replace something, let's say you're able to replace your asset and you've considered all this book value, market value of this challenger, you have to expect that when you reach this certain future, kasi diba, when we try to compare or compute for the book value, we're trying to compute that in the present point of view. So it's like kung ngayon, meron akong computation for the future book value, what happens in the near future? So, after that N years, marireach mo na yung certain part wherein nandun ka na sa future na kinompute mo before sa present. And when there is a difference between the market value and the book value that you've estimated, you have to expect that you will encounter a past estimation error. So, yun yung una natin na pwede natin consider, the past estimation error. So, this past estimation error, since yun nga, wala tayong magagawa dun eh, that's our estimate. So, and then nasa future na tayo na before, nasa present tayo which is before future pa lang. So, this results to the sunk cost trap, which is actually the results of your parang unamortized values that you've tried to compute based on the present. So, itong past estimation and sunk cost trap, usually they are magkasama lagi, no? So, yun, yung past estimation error and then yung sunk cost trap, usually they are the results of your estimates done in the past. So, wala na tayong magagawa dun. It's like, well, after reaching this certain market value, do we really have to replace because malayo na yung market value nito compared dun sa ating estimates. So, that could be your basis, but one of the most important, or usually the one that is used in evaluation for the replacement analysis, is this number 3, which is the investment value of existing assets and the outsider's viewpoint. So when using the outsider's viewpoint, the total investment in the defender is the opportunity cost of not selling the existing asset for its current market value plus the cost of upgrading. Syempre kung meron siyang upgrade, it to be competitive with the best available challenger. And of course, all feasible challengers are to be considered. Remember, when we want to analyze if we really have to replace a certain asset, we have to consider all the possible upgrades of our current, let's say, asset. Kasi, what if pwede naman siyang i-upgrade and then at a lower cost? Tapos, okay pa naman yung kanyang market value. So, will it still be more like economical if let's just keep this asset and then just upgrade rather than replacing it totally with a new challenger? So that's always your question, and this is usually what we use to determine if you can replace a certain asset or not. But of course, the previous two can also be considered. But then sabi ko nga, it's a past estimation error, so wala kayong magagawa doon. So that's why we always try to like compute for the new market value or the salvage value, considering all the upgrades, and then try to compare it with the new challenger. Now, these 6 are the economic lives. So it could be the economic life of the challenger or the defender. You may compare whichever has the longer economic life, but sabi ko nga number 3 is the most appropriate. And then this income tax consequences, more of the do nothing, something like do nothing or not, or really sell the asset that you have. So remember, when you have a certain asset that you want to dispose, this disposal of asset, let's say yung car mo, ginamit mo siya to raise certain money. So, yung lahat ng money na produce nung certain asset mo na yun, which is yung car mo, we call that the capital gain, and it's not taxable kasi na-produce siya based on this certain asset. But whenever you want to dispose this certain asset that you have, and remember, if your asset has a greater value than the undepreciated capitalized cost, so you will be gaining a certain amount of money after selling kasi mas malaki pa rin yung salvage value niya or market value. So, with that will be taxable. So, any income tax that you will be gaining from this disposal will be taxable. So, what if the tax raises to like 40% or 50%? So, will it still be something like parang profitable pa ba talaga kung ibebenta mo siya? Or, ayun nga, i-dispose mo knowing na yung tax niya sobrang laki kahit pa magkaroon ka ng gain. So, sometimes the companies just choose to like not sell it, no? Kasi nga, though makaka-gain pa rin sila, but the tax is like, ang laki naman din. You just gain a little bit for it, and then, malay mo yung other parts nun, you can use that to like upgrade other parts of your other equipment. So, that's also an option. That's why when you start working on a certain industry, no, you will always see something like equipment or machines na nakatamba ka lang. They don't sell it. It's just there. Kasi sometimes the disposal is taxable, and they just don't want to sell it for the fact na nagkakaroon pa ng tax after selling that and the disposal issues, diba? So if ever the salvage value, the market value is less than the undepreciated capitalized cost, you won't gain any like taxable income because wala ka rin namang income. So, in that case, mas madali siya, di ba? Pero remember, if the equipment or the asset has a greater value, then magiging taxable siya, which usually we avoid that. Well, it depends on the company, but sometimes we avoid that, no? And that's the income tax consequences. So, yung ano doon, yung parang solution doon is to not really is to really incorporate the after tax analysis kasi 'di ba we can consider before tax and after tax. So what if we try to compute for this using the after tax? So it's like tataksan mo na siya and let's compare. But syempre hindi naman yun usually nagagawa kasi mas mahirap siyang parang scenario na i-consider. So yun, those are the 6 parang market factors that we usually consider in evaluating for the replacement of a certain equipment. And let's try solving one for this now. A firm owns a pressure vessel, so ito na yung ating asset, no, that is contemplating replacing. So parang kailangan daw i-replace. So probably the reason is that hindi na siya ganun ka-efficient or new technology is parang available. So the old pressure vessel has annual operating and maintenance expenses. So whenever you have a Defender, you have to expect na meron siyang annual operating expenses, 'di ba? Kasi nga lahat naman na-expect natin na merong annual operating and maintenance cost. So 60,000 yon per year and it can be kept for 5 more years. So at which it will have a zero market value. So it is believed that 30,000 could be obtained for the old pressure vessel if it were sold now, and a new pressure vessel can be purchased for 120,000. So that's your Challenger. And the new pressure vessel will have a market value of 50,000 in 5 years and will have an annual operating and maintenance expense of 30,000 per year. So we will be using a before tax MAR of 20% per year and determine whether or not the old pressure vessel should be replaced. So like this one, we're using the before tax MAR, so hindi dito ina-account yung mga after tax analysis natin based on the selling price of your asset upon its disposal. So if ever you'll be gaining something or not, that's out of our question. So ang mahalaga dito is just we use the given. So the Defender, so remember, if you want to consider our study period of 5 years, so let's say n is equal to 5. So in short, we could say that will be negative 30,000 kasi remember, we're considering the outsider's viewpoint and not your own viewpoint here. That's why it's negative. And then, kasi parang, di ba kung outsider's viewpoint ka, so technically that's negative kasi you have to pay for that on the current certain value niya. In this present point of time, that's 30,000. So it's like negative. And then, ano ba yung maintenance cost nito? So that's negative 60,000. And we multiply this by the uniform series present worth factor. So that's 1 minus 1.2 raised to negative 5 over 0.2. So this results to negative 209,436.7284. Okay, dollars. Okay, and then we can compute for the Challenger. So itong Challenger, parang viewpoint naman natin to yung consider natin for the Challenger. Let's start with this. It can be purchased now for 120,000. So technically, the negative 120,000. And then meron siyang 30,000 annual maintenance cost. So that's 30,000 times your uniform series natin. So 1 minus 1.2 raised to negative 5 over 0.2. Okay? And then, sabi natin, may salvage value siya in 5 years. So that's plus 50,000. So remember, this is 5 years and we have to parang bring this to the present. Given tayo ng future. So it's like 50,000 and then 1.2 raised to negative 5. So what could be the answer? So the answer here is 189,624.4586. Okay, so this is your cost for the Challenger. So with this, you can just compare these two and alam naman natin na yung absolute value of this would be lesser itong 189, or we could just say na this is like less negative yung ating Challenger. So we could pick out here the Challenger as our better option kasi nga yun, mas mas less yung kanyang investment cost compared to the Defender. So dito hindi natin na-consider upgrade kasi wala namang available sa ating example na kailangan na pwede siyang lagyan ng upgrade. But if ever we can consider that as additional, Pero since wala naman, eh, we don't have any additional. And remember, kaya ito negative, you might be thinking na, bakit na to negative? Eh, di ba, that can be sold for 30,000. Sold. So that means parang ano siya, parang profit mo, di ba? But then again, we're considering the outsider's viewpoint here. So if it's the outsider, then I'm the one to like purchase that certain pressure vessel. So therefore, I have to pay 30,000, and that payment is actually a cash outflow from me and not inflow, parang ganon. But yung 60,000 na yun, so of course, since maintenance cost niya rin, so therefore, yung 60,000 na yun is also an additional cost, so that's negative also. So if you want to consider the defender, you always have to think about the outsider's viewpoint. And when you're trying to evaluate the challenger, you have to think of your own viewpoint in this case, kasi you will be the one to purchase this certain equipment. So ganun lang naman yung concept ng ating replacement analysis. Okay, so hopefully malinaw yun, and I think we can now proceed with the break-even analysis.